Hello, everyone. Margaret Swift Thompson of Embrace Family Recovery, here with you today to share this special series that I'm putting out on the Embrace Family Recovery podcast. So I have done something that I have dreamed about, I have been suggested to do, and I have been fearful of through much of my career, and that is write part of my story. I am excited to announce that I am in a collaboration created by Women's Speaker Association, a book entitled Voices of the 21st Century, Women Empowered Through Passion and Purpose. I, along with 44 other remarkable women from around the world, have chosen to write a chapter each based on the stories of our lives, our experiences about passion and purpose. And so I am thrilled during this series to introduce you to some of my co-authors. And in the next month leading up to the book launch on February 6th, I am honored and thrilled to share space on this platform with my co-authors. So buckle up and meet some of the women who I have been experiencing this journey with over the last year, leading up to the launch of our book, Voices of the 21st Century, Women Empowered Through Passion and Purpose. So we continue this journey of getting an opportunity to meet some of the fellow authors of this incredible book that we're all a part of. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Teresa, who I will encourage to introduce you how you would like to introduce yourself, because I always find that even more interesting than trying to read your accolades off for you.
No worries. I am Dr. Teresa Barnes. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field of mental health for almost 30 years. I've worked in a variety of settings, schools, hospitals, agencies, private practice. Right now, I own a private practice, a group private practice in Colorado and Illinois. And I'm actually also working alongside medical residents as a behavioral health core faculty at a neighborhood local hospital, Mercy Health. And I've learned a lot about how important it is to focus on healing for healers. I think a lot of people forget that we're human. So my whole treatment approach and my target population is other healers and providers, and providing a space for them to feel held in their work.
So important. As a fellow healer and provider, I resonate greatly with how vital it is to have our support networks and have our resources to help us be the best we can be. So, Dr. Barnes, when it comes to being a part of this incredible book, The Voices of the 21st Century, Women Empowered Through Passion and Purpose, what made you want to be a part of this?
Well, it took me a little bit to be transparent, because I had met another author. This is her fourth time being part of Voices of the 21st Century. And she told me she was part of this book. I felt a little intimidated because I was like, oh my gosh, what will entail? I know that I've tried to write and publish in the past, and it felt very daunting. And I slowly start realizing that strength is in numbers. And so it was just nice to kind of collaborate and be among other women. So as I became more and more involved in WSA, Women's Speakers Association, I started to feel more of a sense of community. So it made it more safer for me to put my words on paper. So I decided I will do it this time. And everyone that I've known who've been part of it told me that how much they've gotten from it. So
I can relate to that too. I've heard so many people say the benefits of this, not only just being able to take that step and go through the process of publishing, but to take this journey on with other women has been wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
Is there a special piece to what you've written that you would want to share? Is there something about your chapter of the book that you would like to read or share with the audience?
Well, it's a lot related to my recent shift in my treatment focus. 2020, which we all can say 2020 ... right?
Mm-hmm.
COVID brought in so many different aspects of suffering, but also enlightenment. And what part of the enlightenment for me was that as a healer, that I needed to feel held as well. I mean, I was going through a lot of parallel experiences with my clients, and I didn't really know what to tell them. I mean, no one who's alive today lived through the pandemic.
Right.
I was having the same stresses with e-learning with my child and trying to figure out how to manage work and all the anxiety around my health and my family, that it was becoming an issue where I would meet with other therapists and they're like, man, we need help. We need support. And what are we telling our patients then? And so my whole passion about healing other healers, how can I feel held as a healer? Kind of the chapter came from that of how do I mother my own mind here? Because especially being a mom and a care provider, that intersectionality of holding.
Yeah.
Holding the reality and pain for so many other people, not only in my professional life, my personal life, me needing to mother these other parts of myself as well as I'm mothering others. That's where a lot of that came from for my chapter, is beginning that conversation with my child parts, those parts of me that come alongside, and hoping that by having other healers read this, they'd be like, oh, it's okay to feel held while I'm holding. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of incompetency for me to check back in to that child, Teresa, and say, hey, how you doing? Or when she's feeling threatened, to be able to attend to her like I would do my own living child outside of my body. So that's where a lot of that came from.
Was it difficult to write?
It was difficult to get started, which is really weird because I always consider myself a writer, a prolific writer, actually. I had wrote another book. It's just unpublished. It was more so my memoir.
Sure.
And I've written like what you would call mock greeting cards for people. And I thought, oh, writing, no problem. I can write. But somehow when I sat down, I was like, oh my gosh, what do I write about? I think it was more of a challenge that we were limited by the space. Because if they had said, hey, write as long as you want or whatever, it would have been quicker, but I'm going to stick to this parameter. And then I was like, oh, what can I write that's going to be a power-packed, impactful in this kind of short piece?
Yeah.
So I thought about what I've been going through a lot emotionally. And a lot of it is kind of sitting with these child parts of myself, because they've been more alive than ever. And I think with most of us, they have. I think COVID has really let the kind of lid off in terms of all our insecurities, all our uncertainties, and what part of our life do we feel the most insecure, that we need the most holding. Psychically, developmentally, was always childhood, right? It's like needing someone to kind of hold us and be able to say, okay, it's going to be okay. It's going to be that. I think all of that's got triggered after COVID because the rug has been slipped up under us. And we need that. We need to be able to feel like things are contained and held.
The thing that is interesting in talking to our fellow sister authors is there was a level of vulnerability to write that's different than speaking if you're a speaker.
Yes.
And I want to put out there that as a professional trained in the mental health world, when I was trained, we were blank slates. We weren't showing our vulnerabilities. That was not accepted or encouraged. Yes, supervision was recommended and all those good things. But I wonder if that was at all a struggle for you with your training or your professional training, coming to a point of saying, you know what, I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna put my truth on the paper.
I think it's so funny. I often would talk to other healers about this. I said, I really am focused on bringing my humanity back, or fighting for my humanity, because in your personal life, I think people forget that. Like I just off the side note, I got together with a friend I hadn't seen in many, many years. And I was visiting her town because I was there for a conference, and she was like, hey, let's meet for dinner. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. I can kind of unwind, talk. The whole time was about her stuff, like talking. And then she stopped herself and said, oh, I'm acting like you're my therapist. And then she said, oh, but you're used to it because you do this for a living. And then she kept on talking. So I remember leaving that encounter feeling so drained. I was like, I wanted to relax. I wanted to be able to connect and show some of my insides and not have to be the one to hold it all the time, even when I'm off in my downtime. So part of my motivation is that, we need healing too. And I want to fight for that humanity piece. That yes, I could be a professional, be trained, and still be clueless on how to mother a strong-willed child. Which, by the way, I'm waiting for someone to write me a quick book on how to do that, because sometimes I feel like I'm 19 with my daughter. Do you know what I'm doing with the kid? She's so different than me, but yet I can be so astute and understand what I'm doing when it comes to with clients. So that living in those dualities is very humbling, but I've embraced it because I really think that is some way for people to see our humanity, because they do forget that we hurt and we can't be strong. We can't hold it all the time. So yeah.
You're here. I love that. It's that permission to nurture yourself, to be vulnerable, to allow people to step in those gaps for us, which is hard when we're the ones who've been the fixer or the caretaker or the person seen in that light. And with that strong-willed daughter, man, channeling that in the right direction, she will so do well.
She will. I tell people, you will hear from her. You are going to hear from her. Her name is going to be in lights, because those kind of kids are revolutionaries. They're not going to go by the beat of everybody else's drum. They're going to dig their heels in. So when she finds her ride or die, I'm just going to be back in the corner tearing up for a different reason. I'm tearing up because I'm trying to get through it, but I'm going to be tearing up for joy. Then it's going to be amazing.
That is amazing. And it's so important to remember, because in those times where it feels like a battle of those.
Yes.
Yeah. Why a book with other women? I know why I did it. What was your reasoning for being on a board with all women authors?
Well, I think the sense of community, which I did state a lot in my chapter, was something that I've always craved. And I always felt like it was elusive to me, having a true sense of community where I could feel seen and held in that, other than saying people see you, but sometimes through judgment or through where you need to be like this and all that. And always feeling like needing just that village to kind of come alongside me. So when the opportunity came up, like, hey, this is going to be a village where you really can be who you are. Of course, I kind of like, oh, I don't know, because obviously what relational trauma teaches us is not to go there again, right? Where you can welcome closeness and openness.
Right.
But then there was a bigger part of me was like, oh my gosh, this is what you wanted. People who can come alongside you, who don't expect you to have all the answers, who don't expect you to fix it or be the smartest one in the room, but just to kind of be able to bear witness to your own story, and always still striving to find that real sense of community for me. Because to me, I think when you have that felt sense of community, challenges, adversities, traumas, they take on a different tone. When you feel like someone can come alongside you and say, hey, that really sucks, or someone can come alongside you and say, yeah, me too. I've been through it. It's something about that collective communal experience. I think the trauma recovery, research actually supports that. And the prognosis is so much better. So yeah, the sense of community for me.
And I think one of the things I'd like to ask all our authors is, what would be a slam dunk? If you think about what you wrote this for, what you hoped for, intended for, your dream about it was, what would be a slam dunk? If someone was reading it, what would you want that to feel or look like?
I would want people to be more sensitive to healers, mainly, to be more sensitive that, yes, my child part, he or she comes alongside me. And what is he or she trying to tell me now? What are they trying to show? Because they don't show up because they're like, oh, I'm bored. They show up either during times where psychically there's a trigger, like, oh, I've been here before. So then those parts come back up, or maybe it's a good thing where they come up, they kind of come alongside you with celebratory things, but it tends to be when there's kind of an undercurrent of trauma, undercurrent of stressors. And then there's a perfect storm that's happening in our adulthood that's bringing all that out. So I just would love for people as a takeaway to be like, okay, wait, the vulnerability, the shame, that's not just the feeling, is representative of a psychic part of me. There's a part of me that held that and felt that, who felt all alone. So how can I then mother and father that part? What would I say if it was my own child feeling the shame, feeling the vulnerability? Because often we try to hide it. We're like, okay, let me make enough money. Let me see what I can do to glam myself up or whatever. So people don't see it. And I think that's our natural inclination. But I think when we lean into it, with a kind of a mothering stance, I wonder if that will shift. I can lean into the shameful parts, the vulnerable parts, and mother her. What would I do differently? And I started to know that shift in my own life when I felt like times when I wanted to disappear into the floor. And it was always a relational experience. Everything is relational to me. I see trauma, everything is relational. And so instead of just trying to cover it up or pretend it's not there, and this happened about a couple of years ago, I stopped and said, okay, wait, I want to disappear into the floor.
Mm-hmm.
What does this remind me? What age is this? Like, what else is there? And that part of me was able to kind of emerge more. What do you need? And again, it took a while because normally we were so busy trying to be like, let's just go away. But when we welcome those parts of ourselves, they do speak back. And so that's out of my chapter. I said, oh, she wanted me to fight for her. That's what it was. So now I fight like hell for her. I do. Whenever I sense that, okay, that part of me is threatened, I'm like, mother hit it, and I get really, probably more overzealous because this is a fairly new activity that I'm doing psychologically for me. But I know I'll achieve some balance where not every time I feel like she's threatened, I need to be like, but I would do like I would do my own daughter. I had a mother lion in some way to I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to make you feel like you belong here. I'm not going to try to leave you out. And so, yeah, and I think I said in my book, she's worth it. She's worth it. I don't know if she's ever been shown that before. I said she's worth it.
For all my lovely listeners, I have the privilege of introducing you to Marsha, who I will have introduce herself, who is another sister author for this new book coming out on February 6th, Voices of the 21st Century, Women Empowered Through Passion and Purpose. Welcome, Marsha.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
So, Marsha, if you were to introduce yourself, what would be your description of who you are and what you do in the world?
Okay. Well, my name is Marsha Lake. I come from Sydney, Australia. I was born in London, England. I was there for 16 years and came out to Australia. So I'm a visual presentation and transcription expert, and I have 41 years experience operating a successful secretarial and administrative business.
Within those 40 years, you must have adjusted and changed to all sorts of different demands over those years.
Absolutely. When I started, I was on a typewriter. I was bashing away on a typewriter, which was challenging, especially when you have to do 10 letters of the same type. You just have to type it 10 times.
Right.
And so I grew with the technology as the years flowed. And I have tried very hard to keep up with that technology to this day, because things are changing by the minute, as you know.
Absolutely. My mom was a secretary, and it takes me back to the days where she had to do the roller copies with the ink underneath and the mess of that back in the school. She was a secretary.
Sure. Well, when I first started with the typewriter, we had a carbon, and we had the second copy there, so we had to do sort of carbon copies. So that was what it was all about. And then we get to things like telexes, where we sent sort of these little tapes through to all over the world, and it was just went on from there.
I respect tremendously your ability to adjust and change, because some of these changes would have been really monumental, even though it's probably brought ease in some respect. The learning curve is great.
Yes, well, you have to keep up with technology because your clients expect you to do that. Just very quickly, my background is that my late father was a printer. So I was always there on school holidays working with him. So I always had an eye for detail, because he was training me in that respect, having an eye for detail for all my work.
Yeah.
And so that's what I decided to go down this path, which I'm very happy I did.
Yeah, good for you. So coming back to the book, is this your first time writing anything to be published?
Absolutely, except for doing my websites, which I did the content for. This is absolutely the first time I've done anything like this. So it was like imposter syndrome. Should I, shouldn't I? Same as starting a business. Should I, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a big step. And so when you heard about Voices of the 21st Century, what about this appealed to you to want to be involved?
Well, once again, having the imposter syndrome, thinking I didn't have a story to tell, believing that I didn't have the content, even though I'd been in business for many years, just getting my mind around how I can do it and what type of thing would be interesting for the audience or the reader to actually read. And that's what was going through my mind at the time.
Okay. And so the neat thing about this process, as I'm sure you can relate to, because we've been doing it together, is we have these meetings and we get to hear from different people who've done this before, and we learn from editors and publishers, and it's very interesting. It's been the behind the scenes without having to carry the load, if you like.
I found it fascinating. Not only just the fact that I think there's 6 Australian ladies in the book this year, which is wonderful. The year before, it was just Bridget Stills, who is a very great friend of mine. She was the only one in the book last year. And so this year, not only the 6 Australians, but meeting everyone from all over the world. I've had the opportunity to speak, as you say, on these meetings, learning from people who have been in 5 books or 4 books or have written 20 books. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
It is. It's great. When you thought about your story and you talk about your imposter syndrome and what you wanted to write about, what did you end up deciding on making your chapter about?
Well, my subject for my chapter is perseverance and tenacity, which is me, absolutely. I have persevered over the years and I've got the tenacity. So it was obvious from my point of view that I was going to talk about how I started my business, what I went through and made a negative into a positive and a successful business. And that's what my story is about. What actually happened throughout that whole sort of journey, if you like.
And was it hard to write it?
I did a few drafts. It was hard because I'm a perfectionist. So I really wanted to make sure that it was gripping. I was guided by the ladies in the group who sort of gave me some ideas of, perhaps put some questions in there, make it a little bit more interesting. And I knew the story, obviously, but I didn't know how to put it down. And I do this for my clients all the time. I help them to write things all the time. But when you're doing it for yourself, it's completely different.
Isn't it, though?
It's scary. It's scary. And so I just went to my heart and just poured it out, I believe.
It's fabulous. I found it very vulnerable.
When I pressed that button to actually send it was like, should I be doing this?
And you did.
And I didn't. I just said, no, stop it. Don't even think about that, Marsha. And I just pressed the button.
Good for you. Good for you. So I don't know if you have a line from your chapter that you want to share or something without giving away, obviously, everything, because we want people to buy it and read it. But is there something you wanted to share from your chapter?
I start the book up by saying 41 years of operating a business. Has it really been that long? So that was my start of the book. And I'm obviously not going to speak about the whole thing, but I basically went through, as I said, a negative time in my life with the last job I had. And from that experience, I believe that I was never, ever going to work with an employer again. I was going to start my own business. That's really what my story is about. So I loved working for employers before my last job, but I'm just saying that is until my last position, working directly with the CEO of a national organisation. And that's when I decided, because I was actually pregnant with my son at the time, and I thought, well, I'm going to have time off. I'm going to have a think about what I want to do and whether I will go back to working with an employer or do my own thing. But how?
Right.
How?
Big change and a very
Big change.
critical time of life, having a child. I mean, that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, it was a big undertaking. And then I had my second child after 3 years. And I actually started my business a year after my son was born. And he was a good sleeper, so we had a good thing going.
You made it work.
We made it work. We worked all different times of the day or night.
Sure.
And that's it.
Adaptability again. And I think the other piece of that is, I don't know, I love doing this with other women authors. Not that I have anything against male authors or men. I think it's just incredible to see what we juggle as women, as partners, as mothers, as daughters, siblings, and careers. So I'm inspired to, learn from people from all around the world on that balance and what women do to make it work and succeed.
Yeah, I've added that in my chapter of that sort of experience as well, because, my children were asleep, my husband was asleep, and I was working night times, daytime. Whenever I had to work, I worked in between everything.
Wow. As we publish the book and as it goes out and as people read it, what would be a home run slam dunk for someone reading your chapter? What would it mean to you? What would you envision that they experience that would mean the most to you?
Well, I've done this story because I really want to help people. I've got a genuine love and a passion to support small business owners, especially lady owners, but I do work with both. Just giving them perhaps as much experience that I've got that I can pass on to them that may help them, especially people who may be thinking of starting a business and I'm not sure, I don't know whether I can do this, where I had all those questions, and I just want to give back and inspire people to other women that want to start a business and maybe just need some guidance. And I'm always here for guidance, for mentoring or whatever they want. So I felt good when I did it because that was what I really wanted the story to tell.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So you mentioned there's 6 of you from Australia this year. Are you planning any kind of a neat kickoff or signing or book tour or anything fun as a group of women from the same country? I know it's a big country, but still.
Yeah, we're not all in the same place. Some of us are in Sydney, but not all of us. Some are in Adelaide, and I think we've got one in Melbourne. So we're not all in the same place. We'll do something. We haven't quite worked it out yet, but we've got Bridget as she's our steward. She's the head of our team there. So hopefully we can work something out.
I think that'd be really special for people to come and be able to hear a little bit from each of you in some sort of a press thing or a publicity thing. That's great.
Sure. Oh, well, we'll be there on I think it's the 7th of January for us in Australia. So that'll be really great. And as long as my daughter decides not to have her baby, then it will be great too.
Well, there's a theme, Marsha. There's a theme. There's your big launch of your business with a 1-year-old and all that went into it leading up to, I'm sure. And now look at you publishing a book and a daughter having a child. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm even trying to work with her too to see what she can do when, besides going back to her job, doing other things, mentoring, public speaking, things like that. So it's sort of all because I did what I did. I'm thinking about her as well, what she can do. And so this experience and this whole journey has made me think outside the square even more than I do normally.
It's awesome. Awesome. So hi, Glendoria. This is so exciting to have you as one of my sister authors on this incredible book and this journey we've been on. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us what led you to want to be a part of the Voices of the 21st Century Empowerment Through Passion and Purpose book.
Well, hi, everybody. I am Glendoria Boyd. And what led me to want to be a part of this book is that, first of all, it's an amazing book. And there are amazing women that have written their stories in this book. And I am just really honored to be one of those women.
It's amazing to be a part of this. 45 women from around the world to be a part of this.
Yes.
So have you ever written before? Have you done anything like this ever?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am the author of 4 books. Would you like the names of those
Whatever
books?
you want to share. I will share any links with our transcript so people can find you, learn more about you. But sure, tell us about your books.
Okay. My first book was From Black and Blue to Christ. And in that particular book, I just wrote about what led me to becoming a child of God. Which is my greatest feat ever. And so after that, I wrote Glendoria's Creations because I'm also a poet. And I had a lot of poems that I wanted to get out to the world so that people could see me and see where I was coming from and also know that they could do the same. Maybe they could relate to one of those poems that I had in Glendoria's Creations. And then I wrote Wounded Lambs. That's a book about raising my children as a single parent before I came to the Lord and then correcting it as I found the Lord in my life, then trying to go back and correct those things that I felt like I had done wrong. But anyway, that's what that book is about. It's a very interesting, heartfelt, and godly book. It just tells parents how to raise their children the way God wants us to raise them. And then the last one I wrote was Church House Poetry, which is completely comical. The things that you see going on in the church today, and then you put a little twist, a little humor with it. And so that was the last one that I wrote until I was introduced to Voices of the 21st Century. Oh, there's one I did a collaborative book with my church. I can't think of the name right now. It left me, but I think it's Blood of the Cross or something like that. I have a part in that particular book. And then I found out about Voices of the 21st Century. And so that's how I got involved in that. But yeah, that's my story.
As a person who's written and published quite a few books, what made this different, or what made you want to be a part of it?
Well, because with my first books that I purchased, I really didn't feel like I got the recognition that I needed. As a matter of fact, it kind of depressed me for a time, and I stopped writing. But when I heard about the Voices of the 21st Century and how they really invest in their authors and help their authors to succeed, I was like, wow, I want to be a part of that. And so because of all the good things that they're doing for me, I just had to become a part of it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I already see a difference than when I tried to do it on my own. There's a scripture that goes, two are better than one. And it certainly is in this scenario. It's so many authors that is willing to reach out and help you to accomplish your goals and do the things that you have a calling for. So it made me really want to become a part of Voices of the 21st Century.
Wonderful. And do you have, there's a theme that you share through your writing, which is your faith.
Yes.
Is that part of your chapter?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it is. My chapter is called My Passion Revived. So I share about how one of my professors sparked me into writing again. So that's basically what my chapter is about. And then I have a little sassy poem at the end of my chapter that I think others will be able to relate to and grow from.
So many of us on this are not just writers or poets. I certainly am not. Do you have a business that you work with women, or you coach, or do anything as well as write?
I don't have a business per se, but I am a full-time Sunday school teacher.
Okay.
And I also teach adult women's 50 plus. And I also go to the Union Gospel Mission, and I teach an adult class there. I teach the women that comes into the shelter. I teach them a Bible course once a week.
Well, you have a lot going on. You're doing a lot of service work through your faith, it sounds like.
Yes.
And that's wonderful. Do you have a line from your chapter you want to share?
I do have a sentence, but it's not exactly from my chapter, but it's
okay.
My sentence is, sometimes your purpose needs a kick in the butt.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Is your chapter kind of about when that happened for you?
Yes, it is. Like I was saying earlier, my professor sparked me. He gave me that kick in the butt, that push that I needed to get my chapter written, that to start back to writing again. He ignited a fire within me that's still burning to this day. And so I have other books in me that I'm trying my best to get out there, because there's so much more to write about. And God has given me this talent and this poetry side that I can really, I think I can go far just writing poetry. Well, not only chapter writing, but also just delving into another book, because I want to write letters to my daughter. And so that's really been weighing on my heart and mind. And I'm also a caregiver for my disabled niece. And I want to write about being that caregiver that, everybody talks about it, but nobody really wants to do it. So I want to write about that, ways to do it that will honor God and yourself and make your loved one feel wanted and accepted.
Well, bless you for doing that for your niece. It's a tough job to be a caregiver of an ailing family member or someone who has a disability. And I think writing that will be really helpful for people.
Yes, I do too. Thank you.
Do you hope that this chapter and being a part of Voices of the 21st Century will lead to an uptick in sales of your other books?
I do. I really do. I think that just by being a part of Voices of the 21st Century, that people are going to want to know what else I wrote and want to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my writings will take off. Yes, I do.
Excellent. Remarkable, the courage and tenacity and strength of women to be vulnerable and authentic and share tips and strategies and resources from their story for each of us to learn from. Whether it's my chapter or one of the other women's chapters, I assure you there is something in this for every woman in the world to gather, support, encouragement, maybe passion, light a passion in you. Come back next week when I introduce you to some more of these incredible co-authors, these women who have taken the time to write their chapter and be a part of this book. Voices of the 21st Century, women powered through passion and purpose. Until next time, take care of you.